This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast alongside Matt Youmans at MattYoumans247. I am Tim Murray. Week 5 of the college football season, full steam ahead. Some pretty good games on Friday. A decent slate on Saturday. Nothing comparing to what we saw last weekend in the Red River rivalry for the final time in the Big 12. That'll be next weekend. Maybe a little look ahead, potentially, for Texas and or Oklahoma. But Matt Youmans, College Game Day ascends upon Durham, North Carolina, the campus of Duke University. They've been there a handful of times for basketball, but never for college football. And that is where we start. Number 11, Notre Dame, visiting number 17, Duke. A total of 53, a spread of 5.5, pretty much across the board, Matt Youmans. And the question is, how does Notre Dame respond after having their heart ripped out of their chests? Or was that just me sitting in the crowd? I don't know if it was me or the team. How did they respond, Matt Youmans? Because my voice still hasn't fully responded from Saturday night's loss.
Yeah, I hope the Irish players respond better than you have. Let's put it that way.
Which has not been well.
If they don't, they're going to be in big trouble in Durham this week. I just hope that Coach K shows up to steal the spotlight from the Duke football
He's got to be the celebrity picker, right?
Oh, of course.
He's got to be.
I've missed
4-0 Duke. That's your guy. We need to
miss Coach K. It'd be great to see him again. Here's the thing. You know, I make my numbers on these games on Saturday night, Sunday morning before the openers come out. I had Notre Dame a 3.5-point favorite here. Not much of a difference. Big question is what you just asked. How will the Irish, how resilient will they be after having their hearts ripped out at the end of the game against Ohio State? Notre Dame should have won that game, deserved to win that game, screwed up a couple times defensively down the stretch, and how lucky is Ryan Day? You know, I've said it over and over, Ohio State's an overrated team, and I'm not going to change my opinion after what I said. The Irish should have won that game. But anyway, I think Notre Dame's probably going to get off to a bit of a sluggish start here. If you're looking to play Duke, I think first half's probably the better way to play it. I'm not going to play this game, Tim. I think Irish do get off to a slow start, but they're going to bounce back and I think take care of business here eventually. I don't know what kind of margin they're going to win by, obviously, but the fundamental matchup here is problematic for Duke because you got a quarterback who's not really good at throwing the ball, so Duke's going to have to run it, and I think that Notre Dame defense is going to stuff the run. So I don't see many different avenues for Duke to win this game unless Notre Dame comes out and plays its D game or something like that, C or D game. It is a really well-coached Duke team by Mike Elko, but I think Notre Dame's just too talented at the skill positions and on the offensive and defensive lines to blow this one.
7:30 on ABC, by the way, this game. Notre Dame has won 29 straight regular season games against ACC opponents dating back to the start of the 2017 season. They're 33-1 straight up. I'm with you, not going to play the side. I do hope that Notre Dame, and I think they will, everything that's been said out of South Bend has been the right thing so far. What really I took away from the Notre Dame-Ohio State game was how well the offensive line played, Matt. I was very impressed. You know, we talked about it last week. I thought the middle of the interior part of the line would struggle, and they didn't. I thought they played really well, and for the most part, I thought that's why I thought they should have kept running the ball. After you get an 11-yard gain from Audric Estime, he says, feed me, and they didn't feed him, and he was on the sidelines the rest of the game. Thing to note here, Matt, Notre Dame already a pretty thin wide receiver core. Jaden Thomas doubtful for this game. Deion Colsey out for this game. And Matt Salerno, more of a depth guy, but he's also out as well. I think Notre Dame's going to lead on the run game. You think back to the Clemson game, Matt. Clemson loses that game 28-7. To me, the score not indicative. I don't think it was dominated by Duke by any stretch of the imagination. Clemson ran for 213 yards in that game. I think Notre Dame's run game is better. I think their offensive line is better. So I think this is a kind of a grinded-out type of game. I am going to play the under, though, 53. Talking to John Murray, our good friend over at the Superbook, he said big sharp play came in on the under at 54. I liked the under last week in Notre Dame, Ohio State. That was an easy winner, one of the few. And I will take the under in this one, Notre Dame and Duke. I'll go under 53.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think especially Duke is going to focus on the ground game, and Notre Dame, that's the Irish strength in this matchup is going to be able to run it, I think, right over Duke. Obviously, you got the better quarterback, too. Sam Hartman got off to a slow start against Ohio State, but he's a big-time player. You were right about that total last week, 17. That was a dead under all the way. That first half could not have been any more boring than it was in South Bend. Did you stay awake for halftime?
Yeah, I was yelling at I was like, "You're so lame, dotting the I, get off the field, band."
Here's the thing about Duke, too. I don't think Duke's as good as it looked against Clemson, and Clemson is not as bad as it looked against Duke because the Tigers kept driving inside the 20, even the 10,
shooting
and turning the ball over with sabotage themselves in that game. And that's what's interesting about this. I think Duke might be a little bit overrated by a lot of people.
In the Mike Elko era, Duke now plus 21 in the turnover margin. They don't make mistakes, to their credit, for that. So that's the 7:30 ABC game on Saturday night. Big noon kickoff. Guess where it's at? Yep, you betcha. Colorado. Number 8 USC ascends upon Boulder, Colorado for big noon kickoff, and fresh off of a whooping at the hands of Oregon. Colorado back out there, and for the first time all year, the public has said, no thanks, I'm off of Colorado, and that maybe that's the time to jump in on the Buffs. 21.5-22 is the number here, with a total of 74 at the peak, 73.5, Matt. Noon Eastern, 10 local for this game. USC at Colorado, Matt.
Cinderella story has come to an end, Tim. Buffalo's 3 touchdown underdogs for a second straight Saturday. I think they got a better shot here. Last week, most of us were in agreement that Buffalo's were going to run into a buzzsaw in Oregon, and that game did not set up well, and it turned out exactly that way, 35-0 at halftime. I think it's going to be another bad day for the Buffaloes, and mostly because their defense can't contain USC quarterback Caleb Williams. But I'm going to try to make a case for the dog here. It's going to be a weak case for the dog, but because the Buffaloes are still without Travis Hunter, their best player, two-way star. But I watched USC last week, Tim, and this is a team with flaws. Midway through the fourth quarter against Arizona State, a 34-point underdog, Trojans were stuck in a one-score game. It's tough to make the Sun Devils offense look that good. They were coming off a shutout loss to Fresno State, but that's exactly what USC did. Drew Pine, former Notre Dame transfer,
Legend.
Looked like a star last week against that USC defense, and Arizona State totaled 353 yards. USC did survive, win by 2 touchdowns. This is a Trojans team that has problems on defense. Shedeur Sanders came into the Oregon game averaging 417 passing yards with 10 TDs and 1 pick. Now, the problems are on the offensive line. He was sacked 7 times against the Ducks. Offensive line's allowed 23 sacks this season. But this USC defense is not on the same level as Oregon, and I thought it was a really good spot last week for the Ducks on their home turf. The Trojans have been playing night games every week. Now, all of a sudden, they have an early morning kickoff in Boulder. The Buffaloes just got humbled a little bit. I think they're going to come back and give a much better effort in this game, and I would expect Colorado to make it interesting, if nothing else, because of its offense. And Shedeur Sanders could knock the back door open for a cover if that's what you need. I don't think they're going to get blown out and embarrassed 2 weeks in a row. This number opened 24 at DraftKings. It's down to 21.5. I like the Buffaloes a little bit in the first half and in the game, plus the points.
All right, there we go. Riding with the Buffs in this spot. This is, once again, a noon kickoff. I've been keeping tabs of how home dogs have fared this year, Matt. Last week, how about this? 8-15-1 ATS were home dogs, and that doesn't include UTEP because they actually closed as a favorite against UNLV and lost that game. So
does that include Notre Dame as a push?
That does. I do it off the closing number, so I base it off the closing number, 8-15-1 ATS. So on the year, 32-39-1 are home dogs. So we'll see if they're barking this weekend. Hopefully not in Durham, North Carolina. This is not a home dog situation. This is a big home favorite situation. 3:30 on ABC. As mentioned, next week, Red River rivalry, Texas and Oklahoma. The Longhorns up to number 3, Matt, in the AP poll. But the Jayhawks at number 24. Lance Leipold's squad is playing well. Jalen Daniels looks pretty healthy right now, and this is a number that both you and I were able to get at 17. 16.5's out there now. I think you and I are in agreement here, liking the Jayhawks to keep this thing close.
Yeah, and try to get 17. I think you'll see that number pop back up on Saturday because the public really likes to bet this Texas team. The Longhorns coming off a blowout of Baylor in Waco. Jalen Daniels makes such a big difference for this Kansas offense, and I do think this is a spot where you might catch the Longhorns, I'm going to say, asleep at the wheel a little bit for part of this game. Tim, I like to bet against Michigan and Ohio State the week before they play each other. Mm-hmm. Who does Texas have on deck?
Oklahoma. Yep.
So I think this is a good spot for a hell of a coach in Lance Leipold and a hell of a quarterback in Jalen Daniels to cover this number. It's a big number. Like I said, I got 17, 16.5 out there now. But I do like the dog in this one. In Austin, 2 years ago, Kansas, a 31-point dog in Austin, and beat Texas 57-56.
Yeah, Kansas so far averaging 37.8 points per game. You know, it's funny because last year, I believe, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it was a spot. I loved Texas. They had been kind of underachieving, and Kansas was the great story. Texas went into Lawrence and won by 41. So certainly some payback on the mind of the Jayhawks. Maybe a little peek ahead, too, for the Texas Longhorns. Kansas and Texas, a 3:30 Eastern kick on ABC. Both Matt and I rolling with Rock Chalk Jayhawk. A lot more to get to, including some Friday night lights. What a game in the Pac-12. Points might be hard to come by, and will Brian Kelly get a win on the road against Ole Miss? Keep it locked in here. It is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast alongside Matt Youmans, I am Tim Murray. 3 games in the book, a couple of best bets handed out so far. I don't believe either one of us have a play on this particular game, but it should be a good one in Oxford, as Ole Miss coming off a loss at the hands of Alabama, someone that you and I felt like a buy low opportunity on Alabama last week, and the defense stepped up, especially in the second half. And LSU holding on for dear life last week, and they were able to get the victory against Arkansas. So now you've got LSU going on the road to take on Ole Miss. This number sitting at 2.5 in favor of the Bayou Bengals. Ole Miss has been dealing with a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position. Junkins doesn't seem right at the running back position either. I do believe Zachary Franklin, who played last week, should be full go, the transfer from UTSA, Matt. Once again, 6 o'clock Eastern kickoff in this one. I don't have a play. Brad Powers, who is a part of the Circa Friday contest that you put on each and every Friday night, he came on VSiN Primetime, and he said lay the 2 with LSU. So that was his favorite play of the week as of Tuesday. Any thoughts on what to expect Saturday night at Ole Miss?
I've got some serious concerns about the LSU defense. I don't think the talent in the secondary is anywhere near the level it's been in recent years. Last week, LSU allowed 426 yards to Arkansas.
Yep.
And that was a 34-31 game that the Tigers were lucky to escape in Baton Rouge. You know, I did bet this early in the week, but I took Ole Miss +3. I was just picking off a number, Tim, that I thought was good. I made LSU a 1.5-point favorite here. You know, I don't bet many favorites more than 3 points. I did play Bama last week against Ole Miss, laid the 6 with Bama. I thought it was a great spot for the Tide. Well, I think this is a pretty good spot for Ole Miss, coming off that loss. A game in which the offense did very little, and I think Lane Kiffin's going to do everything he can to get that offense back on track this week. Facing a pretty good Bama defense last week, and now facing an LSU defense, it's a big step down, especially in the secondary. I think Ole Miss can hit for some big plays here. You know, it's essentially, in my mind, a pick-em game, too. And I thought taking +3 was just a little bit of an edge. But I was just betting the number. And betting against an LSU defense, I think, is giving up way too many big plays.
Friday night, Matt, we've got a pair of games that you and I are on. We'll start with the top 25 showdown in Corvallis. Matt, you were on Washington State last week. That was an easy winner, at least for the first half. Got a little hairy at the end.
Well, what the problem is, in a game like that, when you're up 38-21, all of a sudden Washington State starts to sit on the lead.
Yep.
You know, I'm watching the game saying, don't sit on the lead, because the lead's going to disappear. And it almost did. But Washington State was clearly the better team in that game last week.
Cam Ward has been absolutely spectacular for the Cougs this year. He was 28 of 34, 404 yards, 4 touchdowns, no picks. And Oregon State, their weakness, they lost a bunch in the secondary last year, is certainly in that secondary. I don't know if you need a secondary when you face Utah, and that's why I think the line, Matt, has moved heavily in Oregon State's favor here. So this, for me, is a play on a season win total. I had Oregon State over 8 wins, so I really need Oregon State to take care of business here. I think they're the right side. I think they get back in the right frame of mind here. I think it's a good matchup for them. We still don't know if Cam Rising is going to play. I mean, think about last week for Utah. The defense played well. First play of the game's a pick 6. After that, it's 7-7. We talked about Florida, Utah, a little misleading with that final score. Oregon State's just going to want to run the ball down their throat with Fenwick and Martinez, DJ Uiagalelei. So no play for me, but you've got to play on this one.
Yeah, Utah's as strong as it gets on the offensive and defensive lines in the Pac-12 and really in the country. And I respect that part of it. But the offense as a whole, Tim's been pedestrian. We talked about the Florida game. Utes hit for a 70-yard pass on their first play. They get outgained 346-200 the rest of the way. Last week, they get a pick 6 from Dante Moore, the UCLA freshman quarterback, right off the bat. What did the offense do after that? Not much at all in the last 3.5 quarters of that game. So I think the Utes are going to be in trouble here going on the road. I'm really, really tired of the Cameron Rising drama, too. It's, I like him a lot as a quarterback, but all the reports we read, will somebody be honest about this? We read all the reports that he was ahead of schedule and he was going to play in that August 31st opener against Florida. Here we are a month later, and we don't know if he's going to play. If he returns, I don't expect him to be Superman in his first game back. My plan the whole time was to bet against Oregon State last week and bet on the Beavers this week, and that's what I'm going to do here. Actually, we got a lot of numbers that show you this Oregon State offense is far superior to what the Utes are going to be putting on the field, whether Cameron Rising is out there or not. It's interesting, Tim. Here at Circa, the number opened Utah -1. Before I could even punch the numbers on the app, I got Oregon State -2.
Wow.
That's how quickly it changed.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing Oregon State 4.5. At this point, I would not recommend the 4.5. A big part of sports betting is getting a good number. And if you're laying any 2.5 or anything less than that here, you got a good number with the Beavers. At this point, I would just stay away if you haven't bet it.
Yeah, Oregon State, like I mentioned, certainly a team that I need to take care of business. They've only lost 1 game at home since 2021. That was to USC, a game they probably should have won. They did cover that game against USC. Full crowd, Friday night, Corvallis. I think it's a great spot to back Oregon State here. But as you said, the number's starting to drift away. If you're into moneyline parlays, you could put them in and find someone you think is going to take care of business and bring that number down a little bit. But Oregon State, that game, 9 o'clock Eastern on a FS1. Also Friday night, NC State at home at 7 p.m. Eastern against Louisville. Matt, this was the first bet that I made of the entire week, and it was on the Wolfpack. The Wolfpack have been disappointing this year. You look at the UConn game. Look how bad UConn is. They're not a very good football team whatsoever, and NC State struggled in that game. The Notre Dame game, you were on NC State. A lot of people that I respected were on NC State there. Out. And they lost 45-24. To me, this is the ultimate kind of spot game. NC State, Friday night, Carter Finley Stadium. That is a house of horrors, especially at nighttime. And I don't know what Louisville is, Matt. They beat up Boston College. Congrats. It's a Boston College team that lost to NIU. They needed a goal line stand to beat Indiana, who has got a good defense, but I don't really know what Indiana is at Lucas Oil Field. And it's a little bit, I don't know if it's totally, but there is a little bit of that old look ahead. What's next? Notre Dame at home in prime time, which I think is going to be a great spot for Louisville to potentially pick off the Irish or keep that close, knowing it's Jeff Brom. This is a big, big game for NC State. Brennan Armstrong has been a disappointment so far. We talked all offseason about him and Robert and I reuniting. This is kind of a put up or shut up type of moment. So I took the 3.5, and I'm going to put up that stupid hand signal here. Yeah, go Pack. I'll take the 3.5.
I'm with you here. I took 3.5 with the Wolfpack, and you're right. I took the points with the Wolfpack against Notre Dame, and they got wiped out in that game. But we've obviously seen the Irish are better than I think preseason expectations or preseason power ratings on Notre Dame. Louisville, I agree with you. I'm not quite sure. I bet this team over its win total of 8, Tim. If the Cardinals get this win,
good shape.
They're going to be in great spot. They're going to be 5-0. But they're 4-0 here going to NC State on a Friday night, which is going to be a tough environment, like you said. And I also think this is one of those circled wagons type of games for NC State that it's got a chance to kind of change the – I hate the word, but narrative about its season, right? Because it has been a disappointing team so far. But if the Wolfpack can pull this one off, they can change a lot of attitudes about their season. And I think you're going to see Armstrong play better here against a Louisville defense that hasn't really been tested. You know, so far he played Georgia Tech, Indiana, Murray State, Boston College. We're going to find out what the Cardinals are made of here on the road. I don't think this number should be more than a field goal. I actually, Tim, believe it or not, I made NC State a 1-point favorite here. So let's take the 3.5 and hope we got this one right.
All right, there we go. Back to Saturday, another game that I stared at it long and hard. The market started to move against me here a little bit, but I'm going to go with BBN, Big Blue Nation, at home in Lexington. Another quarterback transfer that's kind of been underwhelming so far. Devin Leary. You know, remember last year, all the hype about Devin Leary, he could win the Heisman Trophy, ends up getting hurt, hits the portal. Kentucky goes out and grabs him. It's a veteran Kentucky team. I know a lot of people that I respect played their win total over. They haven't lost yet, Matt, but they haven't been impressive yet whatsoever. I like Mark Stoops in this particular spot. Florida, I think, is living off a little bit of the game that, you know, you and I were on 2 weeks ago, which was Florida at home against Tennessee. It's going to be an 11 a.m. local kick. Kentucky's down to a pick at Circa, which, you know, makes me a little bit nervous that Circa's the lowest of any spot in the market. But I'm going to take Kentucky here. Graham Mertz on the road. Mark Stoops has beaten this Florida team 2 straight times. I think this is going to be an ugly game, probably lean under, and I'm going to take Kentucky at a pick.
Yeah, this is on my list, Tim, as a possible play. I like Kentucky here, too, and I like the coaching matchup. You said it, Stoops against Sunbelt Billy, and advantage Kentucky in that one.
Sunbelt Billy.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, last year, South Carolina ended Tennessee's hopes of going to the college football playoff. Will there be revenge on the mind, or will Spencer Rattler do it again? We continue the College Football Betting Podcast on the other side of this break. It is VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Keep it rolling here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. A bunch of top-ranked teams on the road. We'll get to those a little bit later. Some off-the-radar plays, including one in our backyard that intrigues Mr. Youmans. But one more SEC game for me, Matt. 7:30 Eastern, this game in Knoxville, SEC Network. You've got South Carolina on the road going to Rocky Top. And this number's interesting because DraftKings has it as high as 12.5. Circa is down at 11. Tennessee, of course, being the favorite in this particular spot. I like the Gamecocks a little bit here. They're a hard team to read fully this year. You know, open up the season, Matt, with the lackluster performance against South Carolina. They played their ass off against Georgia, but could do nothing in the second half. And then last week was kind of a box score fraud type of situation where Mississippi State finally realized that, hey, Will Rogers can throw the ball pretty well. Maybe we should let him do that. But ultimately, South Carolina able to get the win. I like Shane Beamer. And now, look, it's a mixed bag. I've looked back. He's a little bit above 500 as a dog in his time at South Carolina. But these are the types of spots, and we saw it last year. Hosting hosting Tennessee, they put up 63 points. Hosting Clemson, they beat them, or they went to Clemson and beat them outright, Matt. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to take the points here, hold my nose a little bit. Once again, it comes down to the quarterback play, and Joe Milton, someone I certainly am not fully believing in. Now, one thing to note, Cade Mays, the center for Tennessee, has been out. And that was a big loss there for them. So that's something to kind of keep an eye on there. Cooper Mays, I beg your pardon. Cade Mays' brother has been out. I believe he is going to be back. But I'm going to take the points here, hold my nose a little bit with the Gamecocks against Old Rocky Top at 7:30 on Saturday night.
Yeah, I'm going to pass on this one. We talked about this a couple weeks ago. I thought it was a complete joke when Tennessee went to the Swamp and opened a 7-point favorite at Florida with Joe Milton on the road. Are you serious? You look back now, and that's going to be one of the worst lines we've seen of the entire college football season. But this is a big revenge game for the Vols.
Yeah.
Don't forget, they were 24-point favorites, went on the road last year to South Carolina and got humiliated 63-38. By the Gamecocks. This is going to be a stay away from me.
Yeah, no, you might be right on that side, so we'll see. But let's get to some kind of off-the-radar games, Matt, and this game really will be off the radar because it'll be on Peacock, 3:30 Eastern, Illinois at Purdue. Now, Purdue is one of the teams, Matt, that we talked about last year when Jeff Brom was there, that you had a great read on this Purdue team. And I texted you last week, and I said, what do you think about Purdue against Wisconsin? And I believe your response was coaching mismatch in the favor of the Badgers. So I stayed off of that game because I was looking a little bit towards Purdue. So I passed, thankfully. Now Purdue is at a pick mostly across the board. There's some -1s out there, as you see if you're watching with us. Purdue hosting Illinois, 3:30 Eastern. Matt, what's your look at this one?
All right, I am going to play Purdue this week. And last week I was on Wisconsin in that game, Tim. I talked myself into the side. I didn't like laying that number with the Badgers, but I went ahead and did it and bet them on the money line as well because Wisconsin had won 16 in a row against Purdue. Well, hey, this is a series that Purdue dominates. Purdue's won 6 of the last 7 against Illinois. Now, the honeymoon is over for Ryan Walters, the first-year coach of the Boilermakers. He's 0-3 at home. So I think this feels like a must-win game for him. You can't take over as coach of a team that just won the Big Ten West and go 0-4 in your first 4 home games. This has been a mistake-riddled Purdue team, but the 3 losses at home came to Fresno State, Syracuse, and Wisconsin, teams that are much stronger than this Illinois team. Boilers actually outgained the Badgers 396-388 last week, and they have the better quarterback in this matchup, Texas transfer Hudson Card. He's made a few too many mistakes, but Tim, look at the other side of Luke Altmaier, and look at his numbers. Pretty embarrassing what Altmaier's done so far. He's thrown 7 interceptions. Walters was the Fighting Illini defensive coordinator a year ago, so he's probably got a little bit of inside info that should do him well here. I say beware of the desperate home dog in this spot, and it's not necessarily a home dog. At some spots, I've seen Illinois -1 this week, or Pick'em, or Purdue -1, but it feels like when you're a home team and it's a Pick'em, you're a dog. So I'm going to say beware of the home dog here that's desperate.
Another big game in the group of 5. Both of these teams certainly could vie for the G5 bid in the New Year's Six, Matt, as Boise State is visiting Memphis, 4 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2. This was really interesting. Circa opened this game Boise State -3, and in a blink, Memphis was the favorite and then was as high as 3.5-point favorite. I took Boise State at that point. I'm going to play the Broncos on the road here. Boise State did travel early so they could get acclimated to the humidity and everything down there in Memphis. I would imagine I don't have any intel on this, but I would imagine Boise State fans are going to travel pretty well down to the Liberty Bowl for this one. Memphis, a team that I backed last week, and I was a little bit disappointed in their performance against Missouri. The thing that worries me here is Boise State just doesn't feel like they know what to do with Taylon Green, the quarterback of the Broncos, Matt. He is a dynamic athlete. And last year, when Dirk Cutter took over as the offensive coordinator for Boise State, they seemed to thrive. Now, Dirk Cutter went back into retirement, and since then, he seems a bit off. He's not a true passer, and they're not letting him run all that much. I think this Boise State team can be dynamic on the ground when you have Ashton Genty, who rushed for over 200 yards last week against San Diego State. He's up to 407 yards on the ground. I know George Halani's been banged up, but I'm trusted in Boise State here to figure this thing out. And this is a big game for both of these squads because either one who wins this game, Matt, kind of puts themselves in decent shape, not great shape, but decent shape to be maybe the group of 5 representative if they go on to win their conference here. Boise State's been really well tested. Obviously, they played Washington and they played UCF, a game they lost by 1 on a game-winning field goal by the Knights. So they've been tested, Matt. A little extra rest for Boise, but they had to travel. They played last Friday night on the road at San Diego State. But I'm going to take the more tested team. The thing that does worry me a little bit here, Memphis, they want to throw the ball, Matt, and Boise State's secondary so far has not looked up to snuff. Yeah. But when you're facing Washington, whose secondary is. So I'm going to go ahead and take the 3.5 with Boise State. I think this is kind of a true pick-em type of game. You look at Memphis so far this year, Bethune-Cookman, Arkansas State, struggled with Navy, and then, lost last week in what I thought was a great spot to back them against Missouri. So I'm going to take Boise State plus the 3.5 in this one. All right. In our backyard, Matt, at Allegiant Stadium, they call Las Vegas the 9th island.
They sure do.
UNLV is hosting the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. Timmy Chang bringing his squad to the mainland for this one, a conference game. This will be a 1 o'clock local, 4 o'clock Pacific start time. 11 is the spread right now. UNLV laying 11 against the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors.
Wow. That's a big number. You don't see that next to UNLV too often. The Rebels are 3-1. One of those wins against a joke opponent, which was Bryant. Suddenly this team's winning and now in an unfamiliar role as double-digit favorites. The Rebels 0-3 ATS versus FBS opponents last year when they were laying doubles, including -11 at Hawaii and a 31-25 loss. Tim, what if I told you a team that plays 2 quarterbacks, and those 2 quarterbacks have combined for 1 touchdown pass and 4 interceptions, is a double-digit favorite? You probably wouldn't be rushing to the window to bet on that team. That's UNLV's situation right now. Very inconsistent quarterback play. The Rebels can run the ball. These are the running Rebels on the football side. Jet Thomas, freshman running back, is really an exciting player for UNLV. He'll probably get picked up in the transfer portal by a big-time program next year and be gone. But Braden Shager has shown improvement here as a Hawaii quarterback. He's got 12 TD passes. Again, the Rebels quarterbacks have combined for 1. Shager can put it in the air. He can move the offense. He led Hawaii back from a 17-3 deficit against New Mexico State a week ago. If the Hawaii defense can contain the run, this should be a 1-score game. It's going to be a tight game. I like Hawaii plus 11. I got 11.5. There were 12s out there this week. Tim, these are 2 teams that are really poor in the favorites role. Last week, Hawaii was a home favorite against New Mexico State. Since 2015, Hawaii is 1-16-1 as a home favorite. And what I just mentioned about the Rebels laying double digits as favorites. So I'm taking the points here with the Warriors.
How about Hawaii last week, Matt? Scored 17 unanswered in the second half to get that win against New Mexico State. While we're on the Mountain West, we just talked Boise State and then UNLV and Hawaii. Here at Circa, I went ahead and took 20-1 on Colorado State to win this conference. I thought that was a really impressive performance last week for them. Terrible spot. They're down at the half. They go to Murfreesboro, and they beat Middle Tennessee. So Colorado State, if you're looking for a long flyer, a team that I was high on preseason, I think they got the right quarterback now. I took 20-1 on them to win the Mountain West. All right, we'll take a look at some top 25 teams in action, top 10 teams as well, and then our best bet recap here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Wrapping things up, it is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Best bet recap coming up here in just a little bit. But we do have some pretty crooked spreads and some highly ranked teams on the road. And how about the fact that the number 1 and number 2 team currently in the AP poll, Matt, have yet to cover a game this year? That, of course, being Georgia, number 1, and Michigan, number 2. Let's get to Georgia. This is a 3:30 CBS game. They are headed to Auburn, and in this spot, they are laying 14.5 with a total of 45.5. Matt, Auburn's offense has been terrible so far. No play for me. I would look under, if anything, here in this spot for Auburn, Georgia.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that, too. I think this is going to be an ugly game. And, hey, Auburn was really, really lucky to beat Cal in Berkeley a couple of weeks ago. Tim, I know you took the points with Cal in that game. The Golden Bears should have won that game outright. I said, last year when all these coaching changes were happening towards, in December, January, the Auburn should have hired Deion Sanders. And I know that Bo Jackson, Charles Barkley, they were hyping that up, too. They were trying to get Deion hired at Auburn. Why is Hugh Freeze a better option than Deion Sanders? You look at what Coach Prime's done at Colorado. I'm sure he's got his detractors out there, but what about Hugh Freeze? I mean, there's not too many coaches got a dirtier background than he does recently in college football. Bring him in, and look how dull this Auburn team is. I think you got to regret that decision. You could have had Deion, and you're stuck with Freeze. This Auburn offense has been painful to watch, Tim. And even though I'm not that high on Georgia, I have no interest in the dog here. I made the line Georgia 16, and we're seeing 14 right now. I like home dogs. I don't like the Tigers in this spot.
Auburn has played two Power 5 opponents this year, Matt. They have 433 yards. Total. 430. They have 24 points. Texas A&M, they scored just 10 last week. Michigan haven't covered a game yet. Got the push against Rutgers, but they're pretty stymied defensively. They're going on the road to Nebraska. Jeff Sims, I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but he is out for this game. 3:30 on Fox. I think this is going to be another ugly game, Matt. I'm not going to lay 17. You've actually seen a little bit of buyback here on the corn in this spot. A total of 39 between Michigan and Nebraska, Matt.
I like the Huskers here, but I missed a good number. There was 18 out there this week, and if you watch the Wolverines so far, the offense just is not clicking. And another thing is they don't run a fast pace on offense, talking about the Wolverines, and they don't get a lot of plays in a game, Tim. And the way Nebraska's running it right now with the Tim Tebow clone at quarterback, I think they're better off because, hey, look, Nebraska was in a great spot against Colorado until Jeff Sims started turning the ball over, right?
And they started snapping it off of the guy in motion.
Yeah, I think what you did see in that game, though, was that the Nebraska defense, I think it was legit until it got worn down, and the offense put the defense in a bad spot in that game. Nebraska, I think, is legit on the offensive and defensive lines, defensive front, and can hold its own here against Michigan. As long as the offense is not turning the ball over, I think the Huskers should be in a good shot, good position to cover this number. And I like the quarterback change. If you put Jeff Sims at quarterback, I have zero interest in betting Nebraska in any game. But with a different quarterback, I give the Cornhuskers a decent shot to cover.
We're showing a graphic right now. Combined, these teams are 1-7 to the under. And I've talked to some folks that really like first half under. 20.5 is out there at DraftKings. That might be worth a look there. So some folks that I respect said that was the way that they were going to go. Both very slow-paced teams, Matt. So we'll see if points are at a minimum here for both of these teams early on. Yeah. How about Penn State held Iowa to under 100 yards of offense, 4 first downs. They head on the road to Evanston. This will be a noon kick on, I believe on Fox, on I think Big Ten Network. Regardless, it's a noon kick in Evanston. I thought it'd be a letdown spot for Penn State, but Northwestern's coming off a game they scored 21 unanswered in the fourth quarter to beat Minnesota. So I'm going to pass on this one. You got a 27.5, 27-point spread in this one.
Yeah, one of the most embarrassing moments of P.J. Fleck's coaching career. He blows a 21-point lead on the road in Evanston against a team that was in total disarray a little over a month ago and didn't even have a head coach. How do you blow that game to the Purple Cats? That's inexcusable. In this spot, it's just Penn State could probably name the score, but I've been a little bit disappointed in Penn State's offense not putting up bigger numbers to this point. Now, last week, Tim, Penn State ran 97 offensive plays. Iowa had 76 total yards. Have you ever seen anything like that? Hawkeyes carried it 17 times for 20 yards on the ground, and it was 28-4 in first downs. Penn State's defense is going to suffocate the Purple Cats here. I think if the Nittany Lions want to do it, they could name the score. No interest for me in this game.
Well, the good thing is, Penn State showed that they're tough. But hey, Ryan Day told us we're tough. Ohio tough. Ohio against the world, Matt. So October 21st, good thing that Ohio State is tough. By the way, Ohio State on a bye this week. I'll lump these two together because in 3 weeks, October 14th, Washington is playing Oregon. Man, that is going to be phenomenal. They both have a bye week next week, Matt. This week, Washington visits Arizona, who Arizona will be without their starting quarterback, Delora, and then Oregon goes to Stanford. Both crooked numbers. Oregon put it on Colorado last week. Obviously, that game meant a ton to them. They're laying 27, and Washington on the road, I believe, is laying 19.5. Any interest in either one of those games?
Yeah, what's interesting here about Stanford is I liked the Cardinal last week against Arizona.
Should have won.
It probably should have won the game. I think the two quarterbacks who are playing for Stanford are good enough, but Casey Filkins, star running back for Stanford, did not play. E.J. Smith had 1 carry for 0 yards. I'm not sure what's going on with Troy Taylor and his top 2 running backs there. And this is another game where if Oregon really wants to, it can name the score, right? So how motivated are the Ducks going to be?
Do they want to? That's the question. It's going to be sleepy at the farm. I mean, that's it.
Well, you're going to have a lot of Ducks fans who are going to travel.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to be there, and they'll provide an emotional pickup, I think, for the Ducks here. But this is a sandwich spot. It would be a better bet on Stanford if the Oregon-Washington game were next week.
I totally
agree. You got to bye next week, like you said, and they don't play again until October 14th?
Yep, in Seattle.
So I'm going to pass. I was trying to make a case for Stanford plus 27. If the number moved to 28, possibly, I'm not going to do it, I don't think.
Yeah, that game, 6:30 Eastern, I was hoping to be the late-night get-back type of spot there. A couple more before we get our best bet recap. We talked about Texas, Matt, and maybe a look-ahead spot, but they're facing a top 25 team, Oklahoma at home. And I don't know who Oklahoma is this year. You were on Cincinnati last week, plus the 14.5, and that came home. They're taking on Iowa State. They're at home, 7 o'clock on FS1. Oklahoma's laying 20 in this spot. I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm intrigued by Matt Campbell's boys here in this spot, but just haven't got there yet. The offense showed a little bit of a pulse last week.
Yeah, it did. Actually, I thought their offense was better against Oklahoma State. That's not a very good Oklahoma State team. I'm feeling better about the Cowboys under 6.5 wins after they got blown out by South Alabama and lost to Iowa State. But this is one of those spots where the Sooners got a big revenge game on deck, Tim. They were, again, embarrassed last year by Texas, 49-0. And you know they're thinking about that Red River game next week in Dallas. I think the Sooners get up big, let off the gas. I'd be a little bit careful about laying the points here. I think Iowa State might stick around here.
Yeah, I would look at Iowa State. That would be a true.
That's an ugly dog.
That's a hold your nose on that one. All right, Matt, let's get to it. Our best bet recap. We'll start with you. Fire away, sir. What were your best bets here on the pod?
All right, best bets on the pod. I'm going to go with. We're doing Friday night games
Friday
too,
night
right?
games too, yes.
Let's go NC State plus 3.5. Wolfpack home dogs against Louisville. Friday night, Oregon State -3. Again, I laid 2 here. Numbers gone up to 4.5 at some spots, so we got kind of a stale number here on the plays, but maybe put Oregon State, like you said, on a money line parlay if you got another favorite you really like to win. Hawaii plus 11.5, catching the points against UNLV here in Vegas. Purdue, pick 'em Boilermakers 0-3 at home. Ryan Walters really needs a win here, and Purdue's won 6 of the last 7 in the series. Purdue pick against Illinois. Kansas plus 17 at Texas. And Colorado, consider a first half play here too. Early morning start in Boulder. I'll take the Buffs and the points this week.
As Scott Van Pelt likes to say when he bets on Purdue, bang that big-ass drum. So hopefully that is the case there. I'll run through mine. Some similarities. NC State plus 3.5 in a if not now, when type of spot for NC State. I'm on Kentucky at a pick against Florida. Kansas plus the 17 against Texas. Notre Dame, Duke under 53. South Carolina plus 12.5. Be careful with that one. That's a revenge spot. And then Boise State plus the 3.5 against Memphis on the road. For Matt Youmans, I'm Tim Murray. This is the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.